So a couple different types of ways you can build muscle, right? We talked about resistance training. Resistance training is obviously going to be my favorite, right? So we can do resistance training that kind of acts like cardio. So if we do, let's say 3 or 4 movements back to back to back to back, that kind of acts like cardio. Like for instance, if I do like bicep curls, right? This is resistance training. You're probably not going to see a big bump in your heart rate with just bicep curls, right? So there's resistance training where you're not getting a cardio effect, and it's resistance training where you're actually getting a cardio effect. So just like people think cardio, like, oh, I'm on a treadmill, that's cardio. It's like, well, no, you can do exercise that's resistance and still have a cardio effect. So if I just did like bicep curls or tri extensions, probably not a big cardio effect. Now, if I did like bicep curls and then I paired that with the next exercise of, let's say, being kettlebell swings, right? And then the next exercise being some type of full body row or a lunge, you can see how you start getting more muscle groups involved. Your heart rate starts to go up significantly. So that's nice because there's some benefit. If you look at some of the zone 2 exercise theories that are out, with zone 2 exercise, essentially when you're working at about 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. So if you're at like, typically around, if you're like max heart rate for most people in their 40s or so will be like maybe around, usually it's 225 minus your age. And so if you're like 40, that's like what? 225 minus 40 would be like what? 185. And so you do 185 times 60 or so. That should give you 185 times 60. Then you're around like typically around 120 or so for your heart rate. So they want you to stay around 120 for about 30 minutes. Now, you may find that you can kind of have that zone 2 type of benefit while you're actually doing lifting. If you kind of do it in a circuit fashion and you choose movements that are more compound, you may find your heart rate stays that high. Now, the benefit of zone 2 is you get this really nice drop in your resting heart rate. So there's a lot of people that are reporting a lot of their data from like their Fitbits or their Oura rings where they just have a significant drop in the resting heart rate that they wouldn't necessarily see for like interval training or I'm sorry, like a type of like a Tabata training where you're like high intensity, low, right? So this kind of steady state thing for 30 minutes, could have some cardiovascular muscle benefits. And you may also be able to get some of that if you do circuit movement. So you can, get one of these Fitbits and measure your heart rate while you're doing it and see if you can stay around 120 for that 30-minute phase. That kind of puts you in that zone 2 category around 120 or so.
Very cool. There was a comment in here from Selena. What about muscle wasting with chronic Lyme? Yeah, 100%. Unfortunately, I've dealt with Lyme and co-infections from many tick bites over the years, and that's a big, big factor because Lyme loves collagen. It really likes to eat up your collagen reserves, and then the inflammation it creates, that invites other things like the Bartonella to move in, create more inflammation in your joints. I'm sure that is a big, big factor for you. I think you can get better from it. I've certainly gained muscle mass, even with the infections. I would still throw it in the infection category, though. I think the gut infections are a big one too. So don't go all in on Lyme and forget about the gut bugs. Because if you've got H. pylori, I think that's a bigger smoking gun for your digestion. Lyme could still wreck you and cause you to lose muscle. I know one of the girls that I used to work with, I saw her recently at a park, and she was so skinny, skeleton skinny, and she's had Lyme for like a decade. So I know it really affected her in that way. But I do think some of that is reversible if you work on the bugs and get your gut better.